Why not? And Di and I just said, why not go live? Let's do it. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Live with Obsessed. We're here to have another jibber jabber chatter this afternoon, and I think you're really going to enjoy this one. I know I am, and you just can all listen in because I'm the boss and I've got the microphone. So I've got with me this afternoon Di Krome, and when she was little, she loved to count money. So, like real money or pretend money, we'll find out. And she later became a chartered accountant. And like, I don't know Di very well, but I know her a little bit. She's so not an accountant. But she came to realise that people are so much more than any metric. And she started her own business, which is called Wildfire Business Consulting, because she wants to make a deeper impact. Di, thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Thanks, Annette, and hello, everyone.
Yay. Hi, everybody. So, like I said, like you don't strike me as being an accountant. Oh, don't ask me what I think an accountant is like. But you just seem like totally connected to other. I can't see you hiding away in a room going with your calculator. When did you realise that, you know, it wasn't about the money?
Well, when I was growing up, I did love to count money, and my earliest memory of money was going on the milk run with my family. So Dad had the milk run, Mum used to drive the truck, and Dad and the boys used to deliver the milk, and I was really little, so I used to just sort of stay in the cab. And when we got home, my job was to count all of the coins. You know those old coin sorters where you put all the money in at the top and they slide down and it all sorts of yeah, all the smells and the sounds and everything. And so that I used to really absolutely love that. So that was my first memory, and I still love numbers, and I still work with numbers and that kind of thing. But I think when you're working at a big chartered accounting firm, you're kind of treated a bit like a slave. You're just sort of one of the many in the production line. Look, some of my managers and partners were absolutely fantastic. Some of them were persons, but some just weren't. And we kind of learned very early on to put up this professional facade. And so we had this kind of distance, I guess, between us and the clients, and I didn't feel connected. So it's funny how you were talking before about me being connected to people, because I never felt that way when I was in my 20s, in my early part of my career.
I so remember, I was just like remembering those. It was so much fun. I love counting money. I used to like emptying my mum's wallet. Yeah. And just not that there was a lot of money in it, but she always had lots of coins and building little stacks of 50 cent. And she used to have this big jar where she kept 50-cent coins. And for those of you who are listening from my lovely husband's giving me tea, another part of the world, we have these very weird shaped coins called 50-cent pieces. Don't know what their purpose is, but they're fantastic. And I used to build piles of that. It was just so much fun. So how long ago was it that you woke up and went, you know what, I need to infuse a bit of love in this old business game?
Oh, that's a really good question, because I guess a lot of time I was all up in my head early on in my career, because I started life in accounting, and then I moved into consulting, and then business analysis and project management and all that kind of thing. And so I was always working with people. But I guess my main focus was about the task, and then it was about the outcomes. And I guess it was sort of mid-career that I sort of woke up one day and thought, you know what, I don't actually like the way I'm being treated by my managers and the powers that be. And I took a long, hard look then at myself and how I was actually was I passing that on in the way I was managing my staff as well? And a little bit, and that was a huge kind of wake-up call for me. And about, about 8 years ago, I actually packed in corporate and that all together, and I started up a pet minding business. I was just jack of all of the, the ego and the power struggles and the bureaucracy and all the BS you deal with in organisations. And people kept saying to me, "You're so good with animals, Di," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll give this a go." But the downfall of looking after people's pets while they're away is that you don't get to deal with the people very much. And I realised that I missed having that connection with the people. So that's why I started this business back up again.
You just said pet minding, didn't you? So you're a bit of a greyhound tragic, somebody
Yes.
tells me. So
Yes.
this has got nothing to do with business, but my dog just barked and it reminded me. So you rescue greyhounds and give them a second chance at life.
Yeah, so I got into greyhounds a while ago because one of my friends, one of the mums from school, was fostering a greyhound. And so I met these gorgeous creatures, and they used to have stands out at the Sanford show. And I met April, who I later on adopted. It was obviously meant to be because she was out on trial, and then she came back into the program, and then ended up with us. And I lost her a couple of months ago, unfortunately. But so I fostered 12 other greyhounds over the years as well, and that's a bit bittersweet because you're really happy for them when they go to their new homes, but it's really sad when you're waving goodbye to them.
You have to, but I guess that really ties into what type of person you are, and the importance of remembering that whether you're working with animals or children or adults, is that at the heart of whatever you're doing, there's a living creature that has got feelings and that deserves to be factored into decision making. John Stringer's just posted a comment saying that business is transacted with numbers, which have always got a dollar sign attached to them. So it's here to stay. But I guess from your perspective, what's really important is that we remember that people are at the heart of business, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, I guess it is kind of ironic because, I did start in the money end of the business, and it's still really important. And, when I'm working with small business, there's 3 pillars that I work with, and it's money, meaning, and good mental health. And they're so inextricably linked that you can't just focus on one without the others. And I think this COVID-19 pandemic has brought that home to me even more strongly, that a lot of people for the first time ever have found themselves in financial difficulties, and then that has a flow-on effect to their mental health, their state of mind that they're in as well. So absolutely, your business needs to produce an income, but for me that's the output of it. It's not why you go into business. So most of us go into business because we're passionate about something, we have a mission that's bigger than us, and for me, I think sometimes we forget the people along the way.
I can remember, I think we're around the same age. When I started business, one of my bosses told me that I was to leave my emotions at the front door and that there was no room for anything personal to happen within the workspace. And so this is like the 80s. And I remember thinking, what a pillock you are. I would have been 18 or 19, and this guy was very officious, beautiful suit, nice tie. And I thought, but how do I separate that from who I am? Because who I am is emotional. Do you think that in the 21st century that we're understanding that a little bit more or a little better, that humans are inextricably like a package and you can't just go, I'm going to leave that bit at the door today?
Yeah, I think people are really starting to get that we're a whole person, and we take our personal life to work, and then we take our work life home. And I got into a world of strife internally when I used to try and compartmentalize parts of my life, my work, my personality, because, you know, for years I was sort of governed by the left brain rational. And, you know, we in our society, we've kind of let the servant become the master instead of being governed by something that's higher than just logical thinking, if you know what I mean. And you touched on it just then when you were talking about us being emotional creatures, and we're also highly intuitive if we can tap into that as well. And for years, because I was in this kind of man's world, you know, this business world, and same with you, we weren't allowed to get emotional at work. Oh my God, if you've got tears in your eyes or something, then the men would just run for cover. Oh my God, you know, you're kind of like, but the women are at it again. They're getting emotional.
I always found using the boss, it's that time of month, and they just like wouldn't ask any more questions. So I guess I kind of played that one. Sorry, continue.
No, that's okay. That's all right. I'm not quite sure where I was, but that's all right.
About leaving our emotions, you know, like if you got tears in your eyes, I guess working in an accountancy firm, you would have freaked the men out to like, they would have been frozen, like going, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah.
She's crying.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas, you know, now if I'm in a workplace or I'm just working with a client and either of us gets emotional, most of the time we just sit with each other. It's like an allowing. You don't have to solve the problem for the other person. It's about having compassion for them and understanding, you know, what they're going through, like where they're coming from. And, you know, if they need help or they ask for help, then yeah, absolutely. It's about facilitating them through it to the level of your ability. And then obviously if it's beyond your ability, then it's about suggesting maybe that they get, you know, qualified help.
So, like, I know that you're not a psychologist or a counsellor, but I'm wondering what you think about in terms of mental health. Do you think some of the challenges that we face with our mental health comes from the fact that we have grown up being told to suck it up, pull up your big girl pants, you know, big boys don't cry, you know, all of those things that have told us to squish our emotions down. And now we're in our middle age, because that's all I can speak about, and we're kind of like going, oh, now they're saying that I'm allowed to show emotion? Like, what do I do? Do you think that contributes to mental health challenges?
Yeah, I mean, my family was very demonstrative in some ways, but not in a healthy manner. So there was lots of shouting and screaming and, you know, violence and that kind of thing in my family. But absolutely, we didn't talk about what was going on the inside in any kind of healthy way. And that's exactly right, that with our generation, if a man cried, they were just absolutely slammed and bullied. And it has led to a lot of mental health issues. And, you know, men's suicide statistics in Australia are horrific. I just don't think people understand how much more of an issue it is for men than for women in Australia. And I think to a certain degree, women have support networks in place, whereas men have been taught to keep it all bottled up inside. And there still seems to be a stigma about going and getting professional help from a therapist, for example. And I know there was for me. I mean, I started having mental health issues in my 20s, and I told nobody about it. There was only probably my husband at the time that knew about it. And yeah, I didn't want to admit that I was, you know, seeing a psychologist. I thought it was a sign of weakness.
Whereas it's actually a sign of great strength that you've recognised that you've got a challenge and that you're going to get someone to help you so that it's no longer hindering your life. It's crazy, isn't it? The things, it almost seems counterintuitive, some of the things that we do as humans, because, we go, okay, well, we'll just keep quiet about this, whereas instead talking about it or seeking help is actually the way to heal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's different ways of approaching mental health as well. I mean, there's that very Western model of, you go to your GP, they might put you on medication, and then you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and that works for some people. And I tried that in my 20s, and at certain times it helped to a certain degree. But these days I go for the more holistic alternative practices. And instead of saying to someone, what's wrong with you, giving you a label and then trying to fix you, the approach that works for me is more asking those questions around what happened to you, what are you going through, and exactly the word you just used then, Annette, was then how does the professional then help you to heal? But it's my journey, and I need to take responsibility for my healing journey, and with help from a professional when I need it. Sometimes I don't need help. If I feel myself spiraling downwards, I now have a toolkit basically that I can just, grab something out, and I can actually stop that downward spiral myself most of the time.
So have you come to these realizations because it's been something that you've had to personally face in business?
Do you mean in terms of mental health issues in
mental
business?
Health issues, yeah.
Yep. So about 3 years ago, so in March 2017, I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought I was having a stroke. I had a lot of the symptoms of a stroke. My right arm was numb. My speech was slurred. I felt really disconnected, which is not a symptom of stroke. It was like I was disassociated. I was actually leaving my body, and I was tremoring uncontrollably. And I could hear my daughter Maddie talking to the ambulance operator, and he was getting her to count between my breaths. So my breathing had obviously slowed right down. And they took me to hospital, and they did test after test after test looking for a physical cause, but there wasn't any. It was basically a mental health crisis. And that was basically, it was triggered. Like, I'd had anxiety and depression for a long time, on and off, since my 20s. And going into this new business, and it wasn't launching, all these feelings of, my self-worth and questioning myself, and am I a fraud, and all this kind of thing, it all bubbled to the surface. And all these unresolved issues from my childhood that I didn't even know they were there. Like, even after years of therapy with psychologists, we had never got to the heart of the matter. And it wasn't until I worked with Linda Conyard, who was a trauma therapist, and a Gestalt practitioner, that she does mind, body, spirit work. And it wasn't until I worked with her, and she describes it as, peeling back the onion layers.
I was just thinking about onions.
Yeah. And a lot of people that you work with, they might just peel back one layer, and they're just looking just under the surface, if that makes sense. Whereas with other people, they'll keep peeling till they get to the crux of the matter of what's going on. And I was sitting in a marketing seminar of all things at once, and I was triggered by something that the person said. And and I walked out of there and I thought, what's happened? Like, what's going on? Like, because I walked in feeling great and I walked out feeling really low. And it took me a while to figure out. It was something that they'd basically said, you're basically a loser if you don't take up our $8,000 program, kind of thing. I hate that. But not everyone's program works for everyone. It might work really well for some people, but it wasn't right for me. But I feel fortunate now that I understand when I'm triggered. So I understand there is a trigger, that Have you heard that saying, if you're hysterical, it's historical?
Oh, no, I haven't. That's a new one.
Oh, I
No,
love
that's
it.
interesting.
You know, when, your hubby might say something and it's just an off the cuff remark and you just have a meltdown and he's looking at you and you're looking at him, and it's like the response is completely disproportionate to whatever's currently going on. And I heard that saying and I thought, that is brilliant. So now when I get really worked up about something, I think, well, hang on, I've just obviously been triggered. What's actually behind this? And sometimes I can now recognize it because I've done so much inner work, but other times I'll need to go and book in with my therapist and have a session, and she can help peel back those onion layers.
Oh, that's onions. As soon as you started talking, it was like we really do have lots of layers, don't we? And when we only put a Band-Aid on them, then the Band-Aid gets festy and old and it falls off. So you need to go a little bit deeper. Sorry about the visual there, everybody. That was like just terrible. So when it comes to mental health, and you particularly work with small business, what are some of the tips that you've got for small business people to help manage their mental health, particularly now because, almost every article I read is about, people for the first time, having to rely on government payments or, considering having to move house because they can no longer afford to live there. So there's a lot of people now confronting things that they never even would have thought to plan for.
Yeah, that's right. I think if I put my accountant hat on for a minute, what it's really highlighted to me is that individuals and businesses of all sizes, the ones that have been caught out financially are the ones that haven't been putting away for a rainy day. So, spending planners and financial planners advise that you have 6 months worth of money put away so you can always cover your bills. And it's really obvious, you've got Qantas, who has a really strong balance sheet, and they're basically going to survive, it looks like, with lots of shedding. But then you had Virgin, who collapsed almost immediately. And I'm seeing that with businesses, and I'm seeing that with families and that kind of thing, because a lot of families are mortgaged to the hilt. So if they lose one income or part of one income, then obviously that really impacts their ability to pay their mortgage, pay their bills, and that kind of thing. And the other thing you touched on is, I think in our culture and a lot of cultures, our identity is largely determined by our profession. And I know, when I separated from KPMG, it was a big shock to my system because, I thought naively I'd go in and I'd go up the ranks and I'd eventually be a partner one day and blah, blah, blah. Well, it didn't work out. And I was devastated when I left there. I had another job to go to, but I think we get so caught up in our identity and the stories that we tell ourselves that it comes as a huge blow to us when something like that is taken away. And, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, some people who have never been on that bottom rung before, which is about safety and security, and if you don't have the financial resources, you are right down the bottom of that hierarchy. And so for the first time, they're wondering, as you said, how they're going to put a roof over their heads. How are they going to pay for their kids' education? How are they going to put food on the table? There have been people that have turned up to charities to get a food basket for the first time in their life. You know what I mean? That they've lined up at Centrelink. Those lines that were going around the corners, were absolutely heartbreaking. So in terms of what you can do for your mental health, it's about figuring out what you can handle yourself, making sure you've got a really good network around you, but still understanding that there can be a limit to how much, friends and family can help you through something. And if you are suffering, and I've just got my mental health first aid certificate recently, you know, if you're suffering for more than, say, 2 weeks, you know, feeling helpless, hopeless, insomnia, your mood has changed, your appetite has changed, all of those kind of symptoms, it's really important to go and seek help from someone that you trust. And for some people, the first step is a GP. That's not for me these days. For me, I've got a trusted therapist, so I know, you know, if I'm spiraling downwards and I can't stop it myself, I'm straight onto them there. Yeah.
They're all really good tips, and I'm going to make sure that I pop those into the comments for people, because I think when you're spiraling, sometimes it's really hard to go, oh, hang on, what do I do next? And it's almost like we need to have that plan before we get to that point of almost no return. Those queues at Centrelink, but even around the world, you know, like I feel for people who don't have the support that we do in this country. You know, whatever you think of the government and whatever you think is going to happen with the economy, those payments, I think, have helped people out so much to be able to just get through the next week and then get through the next week. Di, it's been an absolute treat having you on our program this afternoon. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for reminding us that people are the heart of any business.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Annette. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Goodbye, everyone.
See ya.